Now, Friday's reverse the verse. A few surprises, a few kind of uh-oh moments. We found out a lot about, CIG giving the official word on a lot of ships and where a lot of ships are in the pipeline, And a lot of this stuff are things that we've all already guessed at, things that we more or less already know. But then CIG kind of hinted once again, flying the Idris solo may not be the easiest thing in the world, trying to ease people into it. And then they said, and you're not going to fly it until after Squadron 42.
No! No!
So, no Idris in the PU until after you've seen it in Squadron 42. Some people will be happy, some people not so much. Guess we have to wait and see how that one shakes out. But it's not exactly a surprise. I mean, once again, that's something that we've discussed on this channel many times and something that we've theorized many times in the past. There were many other, things that weren't a surprise. Of course, the Polaris not being in production. They had hinted that it was a possibility back in April that it was going into production. Turns out, not something that's happening. Not a shocker. They did, say that, hey, we are building other RSI ships, and every time we build a ship of that family, every time we enrich that style guide, enrich that, that collage, that collection of RSI assets, it makes making the next ship, go along just that much faster. So the Polaris may not take as long as other ships have taken, though it is still quite a substantial ship, so I wouldn't assume that it would take anything less than a year to put it together, animate everything, and get everything working. So, just a little kickback on that. Oh my god, the Polaris is only going to take 6 months. It's like, no. Though there were some interesting things that did come out of this. Some things that we didn't know. Mercury Star Runner likely to be the first of the Crusader Industries ships to get built. So that, the smuggling ship, it's of course the smallest one. It's going to inform the Starlifter. It's going to inform the Starliner. And as for when, they haven't really told us. Another interesting little tidbit that we got, with salvage coming in Q2 2019. It is possible that the Vulture might squeak into a little open slot in the production team. I mean, they did talk about how sometimes if one member of the production team or one of the artists is freed up, they can give them a small project like that, and that's generally how the things work. But when it's a bigger ship, they need a bigger team to handle it. And they said, with salvage coming out, of course, there is the Reclaimer, but the Reclaimer is quite a substantial ship. There are a lot of Vultures out there, and they probably want an entry-level salvage ship out there. So they didn't say that they are doing it currently. They didn't say that it is something that is coming next week or something that is guaranteed, but it is entirely possible that the Vulture, the small salvage ship, could find itself a little free space in the production team and aim for release alongside salvage in Q2 2019. 2019, not 2018, like we hoped. But, they went into a lot of depth on a lot of things. They talked about the Caterpillar, and, there was some discussion about, oh, well, what if we did broadside modules? Disco Lando brought that up, and it wasn't immediately shot down. I mean, it was treated kind of jokingly, but, it does kind of hold out hope that there could be some weaponized modules for the Caterpillar and maybe see the Caterpillar fulfill a little more of its combative potential. They told us things like, armor really isn't in the game, which we already knew, and a whole host of other things. But generally, what I took away from the video, and it's an hour and a half long, and it is well worth the watch. I'm going to put it in the description below. I'm going to put the link if you haven't seen it. It is worth the watch. But a lot of it was stuff that we've guessed at over the years, things that we kind of already knew. The fate of the Redeemer was an interesting one. That one was interesting because they talked about how it was originally going to be the dropship for Squadron 42, and then it kind of became the Vanguard hoplite, but that wasn't really living up to it. And then it ended up becoming, the Valkyrie. And so, they danced around it a little bit, but, they kind of admitted that they're not very fond of the Redeemer. And though obviously, there is a contingent of the community that very much is fond of it. And they asked the question, maybe the Redeemer doesn't belong with Aegis anymore, which, I mean, I would counter that argument with, too many of the Aegis ships rely a little too heavily on a style guide to tell you which manufacturer they are. And it ends up looking a lot less like a military ship and more like a line of rental cars, like, oh, these are all Chevys. Oh, these are all Fords, like, oh, that's a Lumina. That's a Taurus, I don't think it really bodes well for a military ship manufacturer when they go, oh, we got to make sure to get all our styling cues in our Death Lord 9000 battle tank, what? So I think that there's still that. I still think that that's kind of an issue with CIG is they are kind of building things like their movie sets. They're building it from an artistic point of view and less from a functional point of view. And that kind of led to an interesting iteration on today's show because over the weekend I actually ended up speaking with a Scum member named Monolith, and we recorded something, and it ended up going way too long. It was about an hour and a half, and we touched on so many, subjects, like something that CIG dealt with on Friday a little bit. They touched on it briefly when they were talking about the Idris. They were talking about, people's expectation of, getting in the Idris and flying it solo. So you're going to need an NPC crew, and it felt like they were kind of hinting at maybe a little bit more than an NPC crew to really operate it in battle. And, I think it's something that a fair amount of us reasonably expect that that's going to be the case, but there still are some holdouts out there who think that the Idris is a one-man army, and I don't think that it's going to turn out to be like that, so there might be some backlash from that. In the future, that could be a rocky road that we have to traverse as some people kind of come to grips with what they have projected onto ships rather than what actually is there on the page. And it was an interesting show that I did with Monolith. And I don't think I'm ever going to put it up just because it was so long and I wouldn't know where to start cutting it and kind of trimming it down just because it went on for so long and we would kind of go all over all these different topics. But I think it's going to be something that I'm going to revisit in the future. Maybe interview just random citizens from the Star Citizen universe. We'll see. Something for the new year. Something to revisit in the new year. But overall, during that show, we really didn't learn anything too surprising. There were nothing really came out of left field. I mean, most of it was stuff that reasonable people had already guessed or already knew deep down. As for the Redeemer, its fate ultimately up in the air, I would say. What's going to happen to it? Who knows? Might end up with a different manufacturer. Might end up being completely different. Who knows? The Vanguard as well, obviously getting a rework. The exterior, changes to the exterior. It seems that they're indicating that those changes on the exterior are going to be entirely dependent on what they do to the interior. The interior is getting widened out to make for more space, and it's going to have the same loading ramp as the hoplite in the back. So how that all plays out, though, in the end, unsure what that means for current owners, except for the Harbinger. Interestingly enough, I think they said that they're making enough room in the Harbinger so you can pretty much maintain the same torpedoes that you have now, like the same size of torpedoes, but you're going to have twice the ammunition stored away. So Harbinger owners, I think, are going to come away a big winner from this change to the Vanguard. And it seems that they're still, committed to the pod, module system where you can drop it in and put different pods into it. But ultimately, I'm not sure exactly, how that is going to change the exterior, how much it's going to impact it. I guess all that dead space in the design wasn't for storing fuel after all. Now, it was a pretty good show. It was interesting. Certainly, it's a very long show. Once again, I'll put a link in the description below. I hope I'll remember to put a link in the description below. It's very much worth the watch, to kind of get the inside on CIG's development process, and it kind of gives you a little bit more perspective on when you can realistically expect things and why certain ships take longer than others. They talked about a broad variety of ships. They didn't just tackle the ones that I spoke about. They tackled the Endeavor a little bit too. Obviously a post-release ship, but they talked a little bit about that, and it's a lot of really good conversation. It's a lot of really good content. It's lengthy content. It may not be a 10-minute YouTube video that you can just watch and go, okay, this is something more that you got to kind of sit down and maybe have playing in the background. There aren't too many visuals in it, so you can just go and play a different game while you have this going on in the background. Just turn the sound in the game down so you can hear it. It's worth watching, or at least listening to. Very much so. I can't recommend it enough. The only other thing, it's just with the Idris, man. I'm still leery about ships like the Idris and the Javelin. I still am, because I know that there are people out there who have their game plan, who have their crew all nailed down, who are out there, who are networking with other people and are putting that all together. I'm not so much worried about them. I'm worried about the people who are buying it and who aren't doing that, and who are kind of going like, no problem, NPC crew, gold standard solution. I'm not sure, because, often there's like a little trick of the human mind in there where you kind of gravitate towards information that confirms what you want to be true. Not what is, but what you want to be true. So I would say be very careful around that idea. Don't just close the door to the idea of bringing friends along. Go out there, network, and talk to people within your org. Find individuals who maybe only own an Aurora, because there's a lot of people out there who are kind of like just an Aurora or something like that, and maybe would appreciate the opportunity to work on something bigger and possibly earn bigger rewards as a result of that. Anyways, something to think about. Food for thought. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.